Hey, I'm recording. I'm Jim here with Mitchell, and this is our project on plate tectonics. To start this off, we'll be talking about Continental Drift. Now, Continental Drift was made popular by Alfred Wegener in 1912, but it was actually made by Abraham Orlees in 1596. He put it forward, but Alfred Wegener developed it more fully and shed new light on it. Now, what the theory was that at the very start there was Pangea, a massive supercontinent that was just basically all the continents in one, and that over time it all broke apart and just spread away from each other, forming our continents currently today. Now, the his theory was rejected because there was just a lack of evidence at the time. The only real thing he had was that it looked like that it could fit together like a jigsaw puzzle, but that wasn't enough for the scientific community to, take it as fact. Of course, we know nowadays, because we have modern technology, that he was in fact correct and that continental drift is in fact a thing. And what's directly related to continental drift is seafloor spreading, which seafloor spreading was first brought to us by Harry Huss, and Mitchell will explain more on that.
So what Harry Hess did was he used sonar, a tra gadget.
Now, just keep going to school.
He used during his time during World War II as Rear Admiral, and he scanned the bottom of the floor and realized there was mountains down there. And what he realized soon after was that those when the plates sub went under each other, that plate that went down eventually would be broken down and then put back up as new seafloor, thus creating an endless cycle of just recycling the same materials for eons and eons, which is pretty much it for that. Um, but
So, wait. So, what you're saying is Earth never actually gains mass, it just loses mass in one area, and that mass comes up in another area, and that just keeps
yes,
happening over and over again. And that could
yes,
potentially be one thing that helps continents split up. I don't know this as fact, it's just a personal theory, and I think that might affect it.
yeah.
Anyways, so real quick, I'm going to talk about paleomagnetism, which is basically it's the reason why Earth has a magnetic field around it, and this what guides the compass. And I'm also going to talk about why plate tectonics is known as the unifying theory. If plate tectonics, we already know this, but plate tectonics, it could explain all earthquakes, volcanic activity. It could explain mountains getting built, and ridges, slabs of rocks, plates are no. It could explain the gradual movement of plates, which is the tectonic plates. And hold up. And the types of plate boundaries that we currently know, well, I think they're the only ones. There's subvergent, which the plates, one of them heads up and the other one goes underneath. And there's convergence, where the plates come together and I guess form one. And then there's transforms, which they slip past each other. The main types of crust are continental crust and oceanic crust. Continental being, what we currently live on top of, and oceanic crust, well, this in the ocean underwater, trenches and all that. Which there's actually several underwater volcanoes, and pretty sure the biggest mountain in the world is actually underwater, even bigger than Mount Everest. Which no, the trench actually, which is very very surprising to think about. And in terms of continents, there's 12 major continents, continental plates, not continents, but tectonic plates. And there's a lot of smaller ones, which I don't have the exact number on that. And here's a question for you. what are common rock forming minerals? Like, what are the six most common minerals?
The six most common minerals that make them up are olivine, quartz, feldspar, mica, and proxyline, and amphiboly.
Yeah, I don't know how to say that either. Yeah, you know what
But
I mean.
basically, that's what makes up the majority of everything.
And what are volcanoes?
Volcanoes are just places where a subducting plate is going down, and from that, magma is getting pushed up to the surface, and it's just gaining heat and pressure, making metamorphic rock on its way up, and eventually it just pops.
All right, you see? All right, how do they help us understand plate tectonics? Or, help us understand the tectonic plates? Like, how can they help us?
Uh, you're gonna have to add to that one.
All right, I think how they could help us understand is if you see a lot of areas with, volcanoes and stuff, it's pretty safe to assume that that might be a fault line, or that might be where two plates are very close to each other colliding. And volcanoes themselves, they're just magna vents are in them, but those vents force themselves up, and that's usually caused by two plates colliding with each other. That's what causes, our valleys, our mountains, and all that stuff. Only difference between volcanoes is they just have magna vents under them pushing up constantly and cooling as they go down. And yeah, but hold on, what are earthquakes and how do tectonics help us understand earthquakes?
Earthquakes are just when two tectonic plates are rubbing against each other, creating friction, or when a subducting plate is going underneath a, another plate and it just snaps back and breaks off or fractures. And it helps us understand plate and plate tectonics helps us understand them because that's kind of what they are.
Plate tectonics, they help us understand earthquakes because well, whenever they collide up with each other, they cause a tremendous amount of force, which actually is probably the most force Earth is capable of actually making, which they rub up against each other and just cause just an insane amount of space to react to it, causing earthquakes, which could vibrate the Earth. And I forgot exactly what the theory is, but it basically turns a solid state of matter into almost a liquid state. And I think that's really, really interesting because in some earthquakes, I don't know this for a fact. I've only been in one, and technically it wasn't even an earthquake, it was just a reaction to an earthquake. But I heard that like it'll look like the entire building's almost moving, and it's just like a really weird experience. But what are some geological hazards to earthquakes, and how can we prepare for them?
Some geological hazards, as you said, were buildings moving, which can cause infrastructure damage. Buildings can collapse. Uh, items can break. Roads can split open. And then if you've got a subducting plate that snaps back, that's underneath the ocean, like say what happened to Japan in 2011, where it snapped back, that forced
Yeah.
plate upwards. It created a tsunami, which then hit a nearby town.
And I think the earthquake, yeah, sure, that's a lot of damage and all, but the tsunamis that come after are way more devastating. In fact, right now I'm actually gonna go talk about that. The largest earthquake, well, in written history, I believe it was like a magnitude 9 that happened in Japan in 2011. I'm not 100% sure, but that's what I found on that. But it was said there was an even bigger earthquake before written history, maybe even before humanity. that shook the Earth and potentially, I don't know. There's theories that that's the reason why continental drift works. Like they crashed up against each other. I don't know exactly where, but I know there's some very interesting theories that could explain a lot of why land masses look like they do to that day. Just in the very beginning, a massive earthquake caused all of our valleys and our mountains and all that. And the biggest tsunami, well, the world's biggest tsunami was 1,720 feet tall, and it actually happened in Alaska in 1958. But right now, I'm going to talk about the Japanese tsunami and earthquake that happened in 2011. Now, that tsunami, hold on, I actually have notes here. In Japan, the tsunami, it was a magnitude 9 earthquake that caused it, that shook northwest Japan and unleashed a tsunami. The effects of the earthquake were apparently felt everywhere in the entire world, which is, now I don't have to say how big that is. That's just such a tremendous force, and it's unreal to think that there's a force like that on Earth. But it completely shook the rest of the world. And in Japan, the tsunami that came after was very lethal. Their cities and residential areas were just completely obliterated. We had entire buildings getting engulfed. There was flames on the floodwaters as they rushed in with their piles of oil and trash and, well, sewage. The water was, I mean, you couldn't drink it. The people that did survive in those areas, they were stuck up on the roof until someone saved them. Uh, houses were literally burning down while water surrounded them. So you could obviously tell that a lot of people lost their property and their lives in this event. And residents are currently okay. As of 2017, that's where this study came from. There are 15,000 evacuees who lost their homes, and 50,000 of them are still living in temporary housing to this day. This happened in 2011. It's been literally years later. They still have not recovered. Some of the areas are still flooded to this day, too. And as what happened to the nuclear site, I actually have no idea what became of that. I should probably research that later. Anyway, more than 1,020, 120,000 buildings were destroyed, and 278 were half destroyed, and 70 are, what's that? 7. Dang, I'm bad at numbers. Tell me what this number says.
726,000.
Homes were partially destroyed. And from financial standpoint, we're looking at about $20 billion in damage. I don't know how much that is in their currency, but basically a ridiculous amount. And yeah, no, that's our project on plate tectonics. Thank you very much. Goodbye.